Welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van de Nederlandse Kubernetes podcast. De podcast over Kubernetes voor iedereen. Ik ben Ronald Kers en met mij is
Hallo Ronald.
Jan Stomphorst, Solutions Architect bij ACC ICT. Welkom Jan.
Hey Ronald, wij staan hier bij TechEx.
Ja,
It's
Cloud Security.
Cloud Security. Ontzettend rumoerig, ontzettend kleine ruimte. Ook we hebben 1 cameraatje vandaag. En
Ja, nee, dat klopt ja. Maar we hebben wel veel publiek en kijkers. En dat is wel super grappig om een keer zo op een event te staan. In plaats van dat we ergens in een hoekje zitten of iets anders aan het doen zijn.
we zitten niet in een hoekje, maar in een hokje.
In een hokje, ja. Ja, precies ja. Zo, er is en we hebben ook iemand op de vloer gevonden. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Adnan Hodzic.
You got it.
You got it? Ah, great. Ah, nice. So, Adnan, welcome for joining our podcast.
Thank you.
And could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
So, hi, I'm Adnan Hodzic or Hodzic, and I'm a tech lead for a data analytics platform, GCP or public cloud area in ING. Well, that's what I do at work. Outside of work, I'm also a contributor and have a lot of open source projects, some very popular ones like Auto CPU Frec has like 5.7K stars on GitHub last time I checked.
What project?
Auto CPU Frec. It's it's a frequency scaler and governor adjuster. Basically, it does everything for you automatically. Extends the battery life on on Linux systems, of course. And yeah, I did that a few years ago. I got a new laptop. It was X1 Carbon. It was just like there was a lot of throttling. I couldn't watch 4K videos.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? It was around New Year's, and I was off. And I just went coding like insane for like 7 days. And I was ready. I released it. It was like on Hacker News, number one trending. And the rest is history. So now it got a life of its own. So that's very nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I do a lot of these open source projects. Like if I want to do something, I just do it. And I just release it as open source. Although I know some companies, very big companies that are using my stuff without giving me any credits. I literally had a ex-colleague, a friend, that he sent me what they're like a screenshot. It was literally my README for one of my projects. So, but that's open source. It's,
Yeah. Well, it's a nice compliment to know that people are using it.
yeah. I mean, they could also like sponsor it or help out.
That probably would be better.
Yeah, that would be better. But
Better, yeah.
that's how it is.
How did you get started in the IT?
So I remember actually the first thing that got me started. I was a kid and I loved playing with video games back then. I don't know, like I was maybe 9, 10. And my dad would like lock my computer because I would stay whole night and just play games, be on the internet, like with dial up. So I could use it because otherwise whoever picks up the phone it disconnects me. And I would stay up all night. And then he figured I would also do this during the day. So back then, I think it was Windows like 98 or whatever, and he locked it so because the security was crap, right? You
Yeah.
hit enter and you get in. It was really bad. So he added something like an app that would block me from getting in, and I was so frustrated. I would keep looking at that thing, like I would just stare at the screen. I remember this, and then I realized that this is like a startup app that starts as part of the startup.
Yeah.
And I remember, I looked it up on the internet, I think it was even DX Diag or something like that, where you could uncheck. I would go to safe mode, go to DX Diag, disconnect the SAP from starting up, go play my games. When he's coming back from work, enable it again. But that's what got me started, the first thing that I did.
Awesome.
And I was like, there's something here.
There's a way. Okay, yeah. There's always a way. I hacked my own computer, so we tried this. Yeah, nice. You also had a talk on this event, migrating ING's data analytics platform to Google Cloud. Can you tell us a little bit about the talk you had?
Yes. So basically, it's a discussion regarding how ING is, it was regarding our migration process, how we started off, what are the lessons learned, some things that we ran into and how we solved them, where are we going next, and how the whole story came to be, what we do as part of that, how we're migrating, the teams, how it started with only one team. Now it's a whole area of 4 teams, and how we enable, for example, data scientists to easily start working the GCP. So because initially what we started doing is, well, it's a long story, but I don't know how long you want me to talk about this.
We're interested. So
But so a few years ago, I also mentioned that, like how on-premise is also IG is using on-premise, right?
yeah,
We have multiple data centers, and it's all good. So I even use Google Cloud. Well, what started us off is Google has some really good data-related services, like for example, Vertex AI, which is a complete ML suite, for example, or BigQuery, for example, or even GK, Google Kubernetes Engine. It's has very vanilla flavor compared to, I don't know, other providers would add a bunch of stuff on it, which is something that a lot of us like. And how it started is that we got started to get requests to, for example, make a solution that would persist of 15,000 nodes per cluster. These were Dataproc clusters. And what made it even crazier is that there would be like a couple of clusters per environment, which could easily go to 100,000 nodes per project. And what was even worse is that these clusters would do heavy calculations for like 45 minutes on a daily basis. And then they would be in idle state most of the time, consuming enormous amounts of electricity, costing a fortune. And what Google Cloud allowed us to do is spin up these clusters when needed, shut them down after they're done automatically, and delete it. And this is something no one on-premise can offer this, for example, flexibility. Capability. Like if you want to go down this route with on-premise, you need serious capacity and budget planning because,
yeah.
yeah. And, but that was basically what got us started, and that was the team that built this. And literally, you started off, I showed in the talk, which was also recorded, but you run a pipeline just define time to live, how long the cluster is going to be in idle state. If it's 1 hour, it's going to be automatically shut deleted, which region, and you just run a pipeline. And this is how got us started, where this was very important to ING. Incredibly important because we would host projects in ING that would not be being hosted anywhere else, or would not have the certain capabilities or services that GCP provided. And after that, we were doing this, and then we realized, yeah, but in terms of scalability, we also, everything is infrastructure as code. We have our Terraform and common module repository. So it has a bunch of modules and stacks. And if you as a tenant don't have your service you're using is not part of it, it will create it for you. Or you as a tenant, literally like we're using a lot of open source principles here. Like you could also contribute to this repository, add your service. But it turned out the more projects that we wanted to have this way, although we were doing it like this, very an automated, scalable way, you still needed more people to maintain it all. And it was complicated. And that's when we figured what we were doing is creating projects for tenants that are kind of like have special requirements and needs, if you will. We were building custom-made cars. If you like to explain it simply, and what we wanted is assembly line with most of the cars looking more or less the same. And also to provide like horse boilers mode, because GCP, it's a huge, like it has over 200 services, right? You can get lost.
Yeah.
And what we wanted is allow data scientists, like so that's how the platform came to be, and allows you to easily create a project that you can experiment with Vertex AI, Gen AI, for example, get access to Jupyter Notebook, but abstracting you completely from all this underlying complexity and what's happening under the hood. And that's what a platform team is doing. We also have the Looker team, which, tenants want to BI capabilities. Looker being native to GCP was an obvious choice. And since we figured all of the tenants will want this capability, why not just build a managed platform that allows you to have, as part of the self-service portal, you could get a project in GCP. And as part of the package, we'll also get integrated BI with it. And the fourth team is, that's what I'm not going to disclose, but let's say just Kubernetes. But that's, because it's not what it's doing. It's not, that could be another talk in the future. That's, let's leave it at that.
Interesting.
Yeah, but that's, I hope I answered your question, kind of went on a tangent there.
Well, I can see you're very enthusiastic about the things you do, so that's great to see.
But Is ING it's only running their data scientist stuff at GCP? It's not doing bank related stuff. Is that on premise? Do you run Kubernetes on premise also?
Oh yeah, that's an excellent question because the DAP, the Data Analytics Platform, fun fact is that we're running on one of the biggest on-premise Kubernetes in ING as part of our area.
Cool.
So yeah,
How big is it?
it
Just
has,
for reference.
I don't know the number of nodes, but for example, we have I'll tell you that we have 500 Postgres instances that we're using. So it's really
Fun.
huge. Yeah, it's really huge.
What is the biggest problem then if you run that big?
So that's the problem I was saying. Like we had a situation just during Corona times. We needed to migrate one data center from Poland to Netherlands, for example, and that led into issues to say the least because we're all well, it's Corona, peak Corona, and that made that complicated. Also, in terms of scalability, we need to have more instances. People requesting a GPU, for example, the data scientists. It was like also inability to get certain hardware due to chip shortages because of Corona, and so you still had to pay for everything to run on premise. But I would say the scalability is the biggest issue here. Like what I was explaining, you
Yeah.
couldn't do that, for example, on prem. But it's all running.
But if you run a big cluster on-prem, do you have more problems than only scalability? Is there more?
There's a lot of problem. Well, you're also maintaining it. I know guys are not happy with having to maintain it, patch it all, keep it up to date. Like well, yeah. Well, that was another thing I was even saying recently. We had an offsite and we were talking about like which version of Kubernetes they're using. And I was literally saying like it would be interesting in Kubernetes, and that's not a thing yet. Like to have something like Ubuntu, for example, LTS, long-term support, right?
Yeah.
Because in ING, it's very hard to like update all of these nodes and clusters, and they're released every 6 months. So that's a bit of a issue as well. Like I even have my own private Kubernetes cluster in my home, and that's also an issue for me. But for example, what I do is I just burn it all down to the ground. I have literally Terraform modules to spin it up again. But in ING, this is more complicated because everything has a risk and security and compliance that you have to show you're in control of everything. That was another thing I showed in as part of my talk. For example, regarding risk and compliance, if you're not adhering to certain criteria in ING,
Yeah.
it's the end for your project. It literally won't be able to exist. And that was also the case with us. For example, for every user that's part of the system or has access to data, this is evidenced manually to Excel sheets. And in GCP, being an ever-evolving environment, service accounts being created on a daily basis, yes, permissions and roles attached.
So somebody was typing really fast.
I was saying, like, even if I manage to get all of this data manually, by the time I fill out the report, it's already out of date. And that's how I had an idea, since all of the data is available in GCP, which you can make using API calls, and Excel sheets can be written using Python. I literally developed a tool. I started off, now it's picked up by other contributors and members of the team, but that literally creates the Excel sheet that Risk and Phantom that they can easily understand. But all of the data, it looks pretty also. Like, yeah, much better. It's called it's a graph. Yeah, it has like a blue color and stuff, But it's and it has all the information for all the projects, all the user accounts. They have keys attached to it. Is it run part of the pipeline? Are its credentials safe? If yes, which one? It has a little comment for risk people that they can review it. And you literally run a pipeline, you get a report, and you can go back in history to see, for audit purposes. So this is another example that, for example, are easier in cloud than they are on premise. So there's, I mean, I'm also biased, obviously, but yeah.
You think cloud is better than on-premise then?
Yeah. Even my private Kubernetes cluster, I'm thinking of moving. That was it's an interesting one. Like for example, now on cloud, we're running, for example, a Cloud Run for a lot of things, right? Because it allows you, it's Knative, and it allows you to spin up stuff easily. You're running and off you go, right? You don't need it. You did destroy it, but you just destroyed that one thing. You didn't tamper with the cluster, for example. To the point that I was even in a talk or in Vegas on in Google Cloud Next, and there was even a guy. It was a Cloud Run session, and a person, he was kind of a little bit intoxicated, so his question didn't come out right. But he was saying like, by the time you were building this, like, are you trying to kill Kubernetes? And Google's answer was like, no, of course, everything has its use case, as it does, right? But what I'm trying to say, there's a lot of use cases that just make things easier. They can bring additional complexity. That's the stuff. My latest project that I'm working on, like with Cloud Run, for example.
Yeah.
Easy to spin off. It's running, but it doesn't have it's only gonna cost you when it's running, right? So you get charged only for when the instance is running. You define how big a container will be, what the resources it will use. Literally, like in Kubernetes limits,
Yep.
you're setting limits. But if there's a lot of traffic coming in, which literally happened to me, someone was like DDoSing or something, it was incurring a lot of costs, right? So I'm trying to say is like, yeah, you can make some things easy, but then it's like there's a double edge to that.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So I think cloud is it's more interesting. It just allows you to do things easier, and that's what we're trying to do as part of our area.
And if you run that big of a cluster in Google, how do you do then logging and observability and all those things we need and our overhead?
So that's the thing that ease more discussion. Like I remember, for example, it's easy to get started with GK in particular. I remember then I was part of a machine learning platform team, and it was like a POC. So that's another thing with on-premise. You're building the things, and that's how they work, right? And in cloud, you just have GKE. It allows you to spin up things easily. And I literally did it in like 2 weeks. The whole machine learning platform, how it would run on-premise, that it runs in GKE, right? But it was a POC. Like I was using, for example, the external load balancer to get all of the traffic in, which is not scaled there, of course.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, which is with all of our projects that we're working on. Like it's not just you do your thing. There's so many other pieces that you need to connect. And that's also, that's kind of a problem on-prem, but it's also on the cloud because you need to connect it all together. And especially like even some on-premise, like we use with a lot of, we have services that are running on-premise, but we connect them still to the cloud and we're using them as such. So it all needs to be created in a way. It needs to be connected. I was showing like how we have as part of the talk, we have for one of the projects as part of the data flow, we had a connection to internal event bus Kafka system. But this required a lot of things to be done, especially from firewalling, 9G being such a risk-aware company. So this also is a process of its own. But what we do is when we're building something, we stick to creating designs. So it's like, this is what I'm trying to create, right? Like, Kubernetes, like, okay, I'm going to create a design, how this will work. And maybe about GK a lot, right? But you don't know about authentication or logging, how are you going to connect it all? And then when we create a design, we don't spend also a lot of time on it. Make it half a day the most. Just let it come out, but then you put it for review, right? And this is going to go also with the architects and whoever. And then they will tell you like, yeah, this is not even possible, right? Or they will make some good suggestions like, oh, this is how you could make that part work, how you could connect it all so it's part of the picture. And whoever didn't add any comments part of review, then don't decline the pull request. It's over. It's going. It's happening. But yeah, that's very important, especially in banks, because we sometimes make some big designs, big changes. Is this?
Yeah, you have a lot of rules to follow, risk and wise.
But that's the part where I'm happy, for example, and that's why I'm happy, in my role, because on-premise, it was already all defined, right? This is how it is, no changing anything. where it's changed a little bit. But with cloud, it was completely that's another thing for any company that wants to migrate either Kubernetes or anything to the cloud. Don't, and that's what Angie was also thinking of doing in the beginning. Don't just copy paste. It's like, this works. It's completely different landscape. Let's start from scratch, and see how this plays out. It's I love comparing it to regular cars, right? With combustion engine and electric cars, how there was a phase where they were like building hybrids and just having two engines. It's like in Tesla, why they were successful? Because they were like, let's start from scratch. No engines, no nothing. And same thing here.
Crappy cars in the beginning.
I'm not here very, I'm not advocating Tesla's, nothing to do with that, please.
Did you see the Cybertruck?
Yes.
It's falling apart.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is. The things are not aligned. You can lose your fingers.
Yeah,
if you
and
leave it.
it's melting, or it's chrome, and no, it's rusting.
Oh,
If you run outside with the Tesla, it's rusting.
it gets. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, Cybertruck in particular, I just don't get that one. So not advocating for Tesla at all.
Just making fun of you.
I don't have Tesla or Tesla stocks, nothing to do with it. I'm just saying their approach. I like
Yeah,
those
that's
stocks.
awesome. Then the way the greenfield approach.
Yeah.
So if you move to the cloud, chuck everything away.
Yeah.
And, rethink everything.
Yeah, the risk, what I was talking about, creating the automated reports, we had to go to risk, because this work, and they're like, oh, what do you, they're like, oh yeah, this actually makes sense. So that's a good thing, as long as you have collaboration and we're talking to everyone. Then I think you only see progress.
Do you also see that in the practice, Jan? Also a question to you, because you have a lot of people that have the on-premise environment, and they're a little bit scared starting over in the public cloud or the hyperscalers. So, but what you see is that people just take their on-premise environment, and just to be safe, do the copy and paste stuff, or do an in between, like a hybrid variant. So,
It has also to do with money. Because if you go to the cloud, sometimes companies don't have the money to chuck everything away and start over. Because it's more expensive, takes more time, more expensive. It builds a better product
it builds a better product.
in the end.
Yeah, but that's the part I was actually even trying to argue, literally as part of with the slides, how posts like to think how everything on premise is free, which is just wrong. Because you have to pay it for everything up front, right? We're gonna have disaster recoveries. Like, okay, we need serious capacity planning and budget to make it all, and pay everything up front, right? You still, again, you're gonna hire people to maintain it all. So cloud could, if used as it should be, then it's gonna be cheaper.
No, I think it's the same. You're paying the same thing.
I have a use case which I want to use so bad. As part of my private Kubernetes cluster, I want to compare the same, how much it's like a very small use case, but I want to see how much I paid, for example, startup, you're going to for everything, and if they're Raspberry Pi, I know it's still, you have to pay for them. But how much it costs also in electricity and everything. I literally want to, it's a small use case, but I want to do it and
Yep.
compare it. And what I said earlier, I started off and it was like, oh, DDoS, you're getting a lot of money. So it already cost me more, but in the end, it might cost me less.
Yeah, but you're over provisioned at home, in your own,
Yeah, because I don't.
and that's where you make money. So you're over provisioned in your on-premise environment, but you're not over provisioning in the cloud. So all that over provisioning, you still have to pay. You're that big machine with more memory you ever use.
Yeah, but that's the thing you should be careful about, and also with and that's what I was advocating also on premise. Even if it's already over provisioned, but horizontal pod autoscale and stuff like that, right? Let's just use how much we really need. In the premise, as you said, it is true. It's just go crazy, right? In cloud, you need to be very careful.
Yep.
Because I love those memes. There's a guy who's homeless. What happened here? It was a huge AWS. You could literally, if you left things on, you could
What happened?
it could have. I had a colleague, we were just getting him all into the cloud, and he came back to me. He's at the end of the month, he had a huge bill. I was like, what the hell is this? But also people have a mentality coming from on-premise. it's just like running. Like you don't have to worry about this. Yeah, it's resources. You have to pay for this.
Yeah.
So it's also a concept.
That's a mindset also.
Yeah.
But back to the Google Cloud. Were there more things when you make a cluster in the cloud? Are there more things you have to think about differently than it's a small cluster?
Now, when it's a big cluster, well, the big part which I was talking about that it shuts down. I think you're thinking what we were thinking about is mostly the cost, but it was also regarding these clusters that we're talking about. This was so many nodes that it was not even easy on the Google side, right? That we made a capability like again API calls cloud that we would literally before running it we would check this region have enough capability to provision all of this stuff, right? Now this is there's an option literally that you can enable at least with Dataproc that it can select on its own how it's gonna spread it across a region. But that's kind of the thing. Like being someone who built everything myself, like it almost scares me because especially Google Cloud, they're targeting so much for everything serverless, everything being out of your control, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like just worry about costs and we'll deal with everything else, right? Yeah, and like I honestly don't like accept costs that it's shut down. Alerting, of course, just yeah, make sure that there is enough resources. For example, on our scale, I was also mentioning disaster recovery, right? We literally, especially like for example, let's say Netherlands, there's weird things happening in the world. Netherlands is wiped off the map. We have disaster. I don't want this. Like there's no bug, nothing. But hypothetically, that's a different podcast. Yeah, different podcast. This took a dark turn real quick. So, but no, but I'm trying to say is like we would automatically switch over to a region in Germany, for example. But let's say this is happening, region falls out due to whatever, right? Fire, I don't know what. It's going to be a lot of resources also on their side. Everyone's switching over. That's that thing. You need to know there's going to be capacity because there are Google. They like to, every cloud provider, they like to advertise it like, it's unlimited. It's not.
It's not.
So you need to see that there's really resources. And I mean, they're also making sure of this with quotas and everything that you cannot just ramp up whatever you want.
You have to ask them.
Yes, but now, literally, just last week, I started doing this. There's, for example, a thing called quota auto adjuster. So it's going to monitor, and when you get close to the quota, it's going to automatically increase it by like 10%, right? Which is nice. Like it sees that you're at, because we had use cases like quota is hit, is like our service is not running, very important. But Google was very irresponsive. Remember, literally, this one case, like in 10 minutes, it was sold. We created an issue of like, we have a problem. And it was, maybe we're lucky, I don't know. But yeah, so even that manual is changing for the better.
Okay, cool.
I was just wondering, now we have been into a lot of events and I also see the Rabobank and so doing a lot of talks. Is there some like a collaboration between the banks also? Do the tech teams talk to each other or is everything on their own island?
No, we're not. I think this would be a useful thing that if we did this, like for example, the tool I was mentioning, I was also proposing let's open source this. And I would love to see like ABN AMRO or Rabobank pick it up, right? If we were collaborating together, that would be amazing. But now we're all separated.
Are you reinventing the wheel every time also?
But this is, we were also talking about this earlier with some colleagues, like how even in ING, like that's a big problem. People working in silos and even the tool, like some tooling that we're using, same tooling across all teams. But how when they make it as part of the integration for their team, they will make minor tweaks. So it still works the same, but they added something, right? For everything to work, it cannot remain exactly the same. Like it will change. But this is a problem within ING and within, like, I mean, the whole human species. Like, imagine if we didn't have wars, if we're all working together, let's go to the Mars. Yeah, if we're collaborating, like, it would be so much better. But then you have the internal divisions, whatever. So, and then they're also in the, ING is like a little city.
Is ING still putting back to open source?
Yes, we have
That's the best way to collaborate.
absolutely. We do that. We have a lot of stuff open source. I remember on Nate. I said Nate, not no Nate. In KCD,
That's just it's coming to you.
yeah, it's heavily hard. It was in the KCD in Amsterdam 2 years ago or 1 year ago, where we open source some of the stuff we do on premise Kubernetes. And we do this, and I encourage this. I think this is very important, even for the roles. We're hiring a lot, and when you're writing those job profiles, checking like contribution to open source is insanely important to me. Like it's more important than you showing you did some course on Udemy or something, because I can literally see what you did, your logic and whatever. But I talked regarding what you asked previously. I literally talked regarding this topic. Like when we get together, it's like we're not supposed to talk now, but we should do the contrary. We should talk more.
It's a secret society somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, that would be the. I think we could do this. So maybe this is a good idea.
You just shout out to all the listeners that are working at the Rabobank or ABN AMRO. Just give dadelijk wat.
To the KCD. To the podcast.
This is real. This could really be a good idea. But definitely keep this in mind, because but that's another thing. Like when people release some open source projects, it's like hey, look what we did. Like look at us. But the real intention should really be like, hey, let's work on this together.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I was talking about. Open source, and it's amazing when other people contribute to it. It's like I don't have to do it. Like I'm reviewing code. Like it's growing on its own. And other people's like, oh, I haven't thought of that like that. So same thing with this. But I'm sure that we have the same problems. I'm pretty much positive about that.
Yeah, a good thing for in the future. And talking about the future, our final question is always, how do you see the future of Kubernetes? So if I would put a crystal ball on the table, there is not room on this table for the crystal ball, so I will leave it in the bag.
If a really small ball table.
Would you see or would you like to see in the future about Kubernetes?
Yeah, that's a difficult. I was listening to a podcast by who was it? Like the Kubernetes the next 10 years. Was it Abdel? I can't remember whose podcast it was. Maybe it was Google Kubernetes podcast. But I don't know. What I would like to see. There's definitely a future for Kubernetes. But for example, what I see in the Cloud Run, I really like that. It's like how simple it is to just start it off. But this is also happening in Kubernetes now, like regarding management, like being the biggest problem probably. You have autopilot, GK autopilot. So if we're running Kubernetes now, GK, let's just use autopilot. So that's that thing which I was talking about, how I think everything is moving in this serverless role. But that makes me, because I configured everything, you're taking it away from me. But again, when I use it, you let me focus on other things now. So it's run.
Yeah, it was the final question, but I was just thinking, we are at the Security Expo.
Oh yeah.
There also is the question is the public cloud. You cannot. Not every company can move to the public cloud because there are security aspects or regulations. That also would apply for you guys probably. So
Absolutely. That was one of the questions in the talk, and especially regarding data and everything. So we have a concept data plane where data is copied to the buckets. We also have direct connectivity, but we have such strict alerting. For example, on the buckets, if service account has access to it, like we have alerts that data is being tampered with. Even if a service account changes from viewer to read, we get something fishy is happening there. So we just do a lot of alerting and trying to see what's really happening with this data. Yeah, that's how we're dealing with it so far.
because I know a story about a company that was trying to go to Azure, and when they heard, okay, you get your local data center for Azure, and that's fine, but then they get noticed that the backups of Azure are not guaranteed to stay in Europe or in the country, and the metadata is moved to the States, and then they were like, oh, hands off, that's not what I want.
what is that now? I can't remember the name. But yeah, that was our problem, biggest problem. That was when I was talking about migrating machine learning platform at the time to cloud. That was the biggest problem because data, if it ends up in U.S. like yeah, like the Patriot Act, basically they would have ability if they wanted to look into what's happening there. Although, like, if everything is encrypted, what is even the problem here? But yeah, this is a problem, and this is something. Everything that we're building, for example, we only make it work in Europe West 4, right? That's the Netherlands region, and it cannot go anywhere else, right? If it's going elsewhere, we're gonna get alerted. Hey, like, even if they have right to do it, which they don't have right to do, so yeah, that's a bit of an issue. I'm still trying to remember because that was an issue I was fighting for like couple of years, but I can't remember. It was a German guy who made the whole. Well, I should probably watch my KubeCon talk, and I'll remember what it was called. But yeah, that's how we do it. And also, you can see also the data traveling, like if it's an email, if it's a password. But it also leads to another big problem. Like if people want to really fish it out, they can like turn on and record it with your phone. We were a data leakage prevention system. We were building our own. Now Google has its own DLP. So there's ways to do it, but it's hard. If it's hard to do it in eternity. But yeah, there's a lot of services like VPCSC, the security perimeter. So to prevent data exfiltration. So if data is not even leaving from Europe West Core buckets to other places. So there are measures that can really be taken, and we took them all. I think. Please challenge me on this. But I like interesting. I don't know Jorge is he if he's listening. He used to be in Zebia, but I was one of the talks, and he was talking about how you can do this, and I literally made a suggestion to him. I was like, "Oh, we're doing good. We're good." So it's not really but yeah, through calibration, we can only get better. So
Okay. Adam, thank you very much for joining us in our podcast.
thank you.
Yeah.
Also, we invite you back in the future and talk a lot about the stuff we talked about again. So, yeah.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you very much. And we'll be in touch.